One of the things I loved about the title of this event is that you combine the words education and evolution. Because it seems like the challenges we face as a species today are unprecedented. They seem to be more complex, more numerous, and more intractable than they've ever been before. And in order to meet those challenges, we will really need to evolve as a species. We'll need to discover new ways together of being and doing. And in order to do that, we'll need to discover new ways of learning together. Those ways of learning together will need to happen in teams, happen in groups, inside of our traditional institutions of learning and outside. They'll have to happen between institutions, among institutions, and most of all, they'll have to happen in a way that leverages the very powerful connected digital technologies that are currently at our disposal. So that kind of evolution is what the work of the Institute of Play is all about. It's about pioneering new modes of engagement and learning that can support us as a species in the 21st century. So the Institute of Play is a research and design studio. We've designed lots of different kinds of things. We've designed institutions, we've designed games, we've designed online platforms and products, and we've designed summer camps and services and programs and professional development, lots of different kinds of things. Currently our work is divided into 3 distinct labs, which gives our work 3 distinct areas of focus or lines of inquiry. The first area of our work is where we started as an organization, and it's what I'm going to talk about today mostly. Reimagining what school should look like to actually engage students in the 21st century, the Quest schools. The second area of work very much grew out of the work we had done in schools, and it's all about assessment. We knew that unless we started to tackle the question of how assessment is practiced today, the danger with the schoolwork is that it would fall back to the status quo, because assessments drive so many of the choices that are made in schools today in the US. So whereas traditional assessments are really good at determining the information, the concepts, the knowledge in a student's head at any one moment in time, really great at taking snapshots of that knowledge, we know that those kinds of snapshots are good indicators of how successful they may be in the school environment, but are actually pretty poor indicators of how successful they'll be in life and how they will be able to participate in civic society. So we wondered if we could create a new kind of assessment that would look not at the information in a student's head, but rather at the choices a student made within a simulated world, in other words, a game. So that work brings together a large number of partners who don't usually play the same game together. We have big fish from the commercial game industry, like Electronic Arts. We have sort of the world leaders in assessment design, ETS, the Educational Testing Service. And we have a host of other partners from universities and companies like Pearson, all just trying to explore that key question of how we can rethink assessment. That's a project out in Silicon Valley. The third area of work, which is based in New York City, is all about trying to discover how we can build communities of learning that exist outside of traditional learning institutions or exist between institutions. We've done a lot of work on those kinds of questions with cultural institutions like the Smithsonian and the Museum of Modern Art. We've worked with businesses on that kind of question. How do we build community that really doesn't have a home, or is distributed or depends heavily on online? So today I'm going to be talking about the Quest schools. And before I get into the sort of the guts of the school, I'm going to give you the statistics of the school so we all know kind of what I'm talking about. There are 2 Quest schools currently. One of those schools is in New York City. That was the first school we opened. It's called Quest to Learn. It is a public school, very important to note. It opened in 2009. Currently it's serving students in grades 6 through 9. By the year 2015, it'll be serving students in grades 6 through 12, so full middle school and high school experience. The student body is very representative of what you'll find racially and ethnically within District 2 in New York City. It's a very diverse school. It is a non-selective school, so no test to get in. Anyone can come. And about 40% of our kids receive what's called a free or reduced lunch, which is an indicator of socioeconomic status, so similar to High Tech High. That's Quest to Learn. The second Quest school we opened was in Chicago. We opened it just last year, and it was our first attempt to try to think about how you could take what we're doing in New York at Quest to Learn and adapt it for an environment, a culture, a population of students that was completely different. So that one opened last year, and it's in the old Caprini Green neighborhood in Chicago, if you know Chicago. So what makes Quest to Learn different? The biggest thing that makes it different is that we posit student engagement as the critical condition for learning to happen. If students are not engaged, learning will not happen. That might seem like a really obvious thing to say, and I think a lot of other schools would say the same, but if you actually look at the design of their school environments, it doesn't support that they actually value that. About a third of students in the US who enter high school don't finish high school, which suggests that we actually don't value student engagement as a society. We value something else. We value serious schooling. So all of the things that kids are naturally engaged with today, which might be video games, might be Harry Potter movies, might be surfing, might be cooking, might be making blogs, all of those things, we don't view them as challenges to learning. We don't view them as impediments to schooling. We actually view them as a kind of starting point to design some really powerful learning experiences. And in fact, many kids are interested in games today. And the idea of the game, we actually take as the central metaphor for the design of the school experience at Quest to Learn. So why are games so important or interesting when you think about learning? The fact is, intrinsic to the very nature of games are many of the kinds of things that we know that good learning environments have to do. When you think about a game is nothing more than a very interesting problem space that you drop a player into, and they have to figure it out. There's a very clear goal. There are very clear sets of rules. And that big problem is broken down into smaller chunks in games called levels, which deliver players just enough challenge to keep them on the edge of their abilities. So not too challenging where they get frustrated and drop away, not challenging enough so they get bored and stop playing. Games are also really fabulous at using data to deliver feedback to players, to tell them where they are, where they need to go, and to start them thinking, strategizing about how to get there. Games in multiplayer environments invite people to collaborate to solve tough problems. Again, great for a learning environment. And games in multiplayer environments also activate other players as resources for each other. So the players actually start teaching each other. Again, great for a learning environment. Pacing in games is often flexible, so people can progress at their own pace, and there are multiple pathways through a game toward mastery. All fantastic for learning. Probably the most important thing that's really great for learning in games, though, is that there is no such thing as failure in a game. People will play and play and play and fail and fail and fail. They're not notice that they're failing. It's called practice. It's just part of what you do to get to where you want to be in a game. So Quest to Learn is not a school where kids play games all day. It is certainly not a school where all the learning happens through video games and kids are wired to machines all day. It is a school that strives to use games as a kind of design metaphor to redesign the experience of school itself. And it's a school that grew out of a lot of research that the MacArthur Foundation in the US had put together by convening a research network. It grew directly out of that work. They came out of that work with hypotheses about what learning environments might need to look like in order to engage kids in the 21st century. And Quest to Learn was the first attempt to actually build one of those environments. So at the heart of Quest to Learn is a really important collaboration between three people. a teacher, a game designer, and a learning designer. It lies at the very heart of everything about the school. These three people come together to design all the learning that happens within the school, and they all bring very different kinds of expertise to that task. The game designer is very skilled at making experiences that are so irresistible, so engaging, that people can't put them down. And that's what we want learning to be. The teacher is skilled at knowing what actually works in a classroom, what their students need. And the learning, we actually tried to do this with just two people when we were first starting the school, and it didn't work. We found that we needed the third person, the learning designer, to act as a bridge between these two people. And the learning designer is someone who has a strong background in the classroom, but has since gone on to other things, writing curriculum, thinking at a more strategic level about the learning that happens within the context of a school. So these three people design all the learning that happens in the school, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. They do a couple other things that are really important for the life of the school as well. One thing is they support teachers. It's so hard to be a teacher today. There's so much they're required to do. There's so many people coming at them, telling them exactly what they should be doing. We have a very strong value at the school on actually supporting the creativity of teachers, giving them time and space to do what is most important for them, which is to design the learning that happens for their students in the classroom. And this is their support to do that. The other thing that this team does for the school is that it opens a context within the school for outside the real world to come in and actually participate in the learning community of the school. Two of these people are Institute of Play employees. So Institute of Play is kind of the biggest community organization that plays a part in the life of the school. But these two designers bring with them lots of other connections to lots of other things within the city. Cultural institution connections, professional network connections. And we try as much as possible to draw all of those into the school so that the kids, like High Tech High, have lots of opportunities to go outside of the school. And the community has lots of opportunities to come into the school and participate in its life. Okay, so what does the learning actually look like? What makes it different? So all the learning at Quest to Learn is designed to give rise to one thing within students, and we call that a need to know. We don't want students learning things because we tell them they should be learning things. We want to create a space or a context for them to come to the learning that we think is important and the state thinks is important in a way that allows them to activate their own interests, their own passions, and for them to make that learning meaningful in the context of their world and their lives. So how do we do that? All of the learning is structured in a challenge structure, again, very much like you'd find in a game, levels in a game. And so when they come into a class in the beginning of a trimester, they're faced with some big challenge that they have no idea how to solve. So they come into a science math class, which we at the school call The Way Things Work, and they're contacted by a doctor named Dr. Smalls. And Dr. Smalls shrunk himself down to microscopic size to put himself inside of a patient so he could cure them. But in doing so, he lost all of his memory. Doesn't know where he is, doesn't know what's going on, doesn't know how to get out. Help. So the kids don't know what that means for their learning, but they're immediately engaged in that problem. And then that big problem is broken down into a series of smaller problems, which we call quests, that really scaffold the learning that has to happen to get them to a place where they can solve the big challenge. And those quests address all the typical things you'd find in a typical school in that kind of unit: the respiratory system, the circulatory system, the nervous system, all those kinds of things. Now, it may happen that within the course of this flow of what we call game-like learning, like a game, not a game, a teacher may find that students always struggle with some particular concept or skill. And the teacher will bring that to the attention of our designers, and the designers may design a discrete game that the students can play in order to give them an opportunity to practice that piece of knowledge or skill. So what you're seeing here is a game that our designers designed in order to give kids a chance to practice the use of metric measurement. And this happened within the context of the Dr. Small's mission that I just mentioned. Important thing to notice here is it's paper. It's a board game. So because we're designing within the school in about a 3-week development cycle, which is very short, about 70% of what we design is actually paper. When we do use digital, and there's lots of digital in the school, it tends to be stuff that already exists in the world. Either games that exist, or simulators that exist, or tool-like building environments that exist. And we take those off the shelf and we simply build learning around them. Much more cost-effective to do, and much more effective for learning, actually, because these are tools that kids tend to already be engaged with. They're already at home playing Minecraft. So can we bring Minecraft into the school and actually build learning around it? So I'm going to show you a picture. It's a test. This is what a test looks like at Quest to Learn. It's an assessment. This is something called boss level. Boss level, again, is a metaphor taken from games. In a game, once you've completed a level, once you've learned everything you need to know, you meet the boss. And the boss is a really challenging enemy you have to beat in order to prove yourself within the game. So this is called boss levels. It's something that happens every trimester at the school. It's a time when normal work within the school totally stops, and all of the kids come together to solve some big collaborative challenge. It's a wonderful, magical time within the school. First of all, because it tends to happen at the period of time when, right before vacation, where kids are normally totally checked out, and our kids are totally checked in, which is great. It's great because it allows us to actually assess, to gain evidence about the learning that happened throughout the course of the trimester in a way that kids don't even notice. So it doesn't feel like a test. It's also a moment where we can invite the community in. We can invite parents in. We can invite cultural institutions in to act as sort of witnesses to what's gone on within the learning community. So assessment is something that, through the lens of game design, really looks very different than it does in a lot of schools at Quest to Learn. Because we are a New York City public school, we have to care about traditional content knowledge because we take all the same standardized tests that any other school takes. But we care about 2 other kinds of competencies that we think are actually even more important for the success of kids in the world today. One of those sets of competencies is all around socio-emotional learning. So can kids work in teams? Can they self-regulate? Can they empathize? Can they be a productive member of a community? And the third set of competencies that we really care about are all about design thinking. So can kids seek and solve complex problems? Can they use iteration as a technique to produce a solution? Can they innovate? Can they model their hypotheses? Can they reflect on the process? Those are the 3 things that we're assessing at Quest to Learn when we assess. And this, I just wanted to show you, is what an assessment looks like. The teachers build these together with their curriculum support team. It's very basic. It looks very simple. It's a spreadsheet. On the left-hand side, you'll see all the competencies that they're assessing in a particular activity. And on the top, you'll see a scale that goes from novice to master. Again, taking the language from the video game. And then in each of the boxes, the teacher has to imagine the kind of evidence that they would have to see in order to know that a student has learned what we want them to know. Once these are built, they're shared with students. So students know exactly where they are, and if they want to go somewhere, how they can get there. The assessments within the school, whenever possible, are performance-based assessments. So the flow of learning is not stopped for the students to take a test. Rather, within the flow of learning, students are asked to produce things, to make things. Could be a video game, could be a blog, could be a tutorial, could be a physical model like this one. And these things that the students make can serve as evidence for the teacher of the learning that they have or haven't grasped. They also serve another really important purpose within the school, though. We want the kids to think of themselves not as consumers of knowledge, because we don't want to produce consumers. That's not the mission of the school. The mission of the school is to produce producers, participants, people who realize that through the choices they make in their lives, they're actually creating the systems that determine the world that they live in. And this is one place where digital technology is really fantastic. It affords all sorts of things that weren't possible before. So suddenly students can actually work with the same data sets that real scientists work with. They can see that knowledge is not a set of static facts and figures, but rather something that is built together by people in conversation. They can also produce something like a blog or a video, and millions of people can see it. And that is so fantastic for a student, and it just wasn't possible before. I'm going to hurry up because I'm running out of time. So I'm going to skip around a little bit. So I've talked a little bit about games and why they're interesting in a learning environment. One of the most interesting thing about games for us at the school and in all the work we do is to realize that games are systems, and that one of the most important skills we can create or unlock in our young people today is the skill of systems thinking. To think in terms of complex systems and to know how to interact with the systems and change the systems through their behavior. And games are great because they're little tiny systems that occur in the language of play, in a language that young people understand. So we can get them playing very easily. From there, it's a very small step to get them to start to think about what's the experience I'm having here? How can I modify bits of the game to modify that experience? So they start changing things. And then we can make them aware of that. And from there, it's a very small step to actually get them to start designing their own games. So designing systems for other people, for their peers to step into and have an experience. And from there, it's a very small step to get them to start to think about the world they live in. How does the system of government work? How does the system of a community governance work? And how can they, through their participation, change those systems? So I've talked a lot. I'm going to show you a little video which is an attempt just to give you a flavor of the school. A lot of you have visited the school, which is fantastic. Many more should come. You're all welcome. But this is just a flavor of what the school looks like.
How do we know there are tiny things in a drop of pond water? We can use a microscope to view the pond water.
Imagine you could shrink yourself and walk into a tiny cell. Well, what is it like inside a cell? Is it a fantastic? It's a fantastic journey.
Fascinating. Very close. Thank you so
much. It feels like you're playing when you're actually learning.
Like sometimes you could play a game and not even know that you're learning.
You're actually having fun and you realize it, and then you realize that you're learning while you're doing it.
I have to ask that question, what hat are the kids going to wear in this mission that they're going to be on? And that's part of the curriculum design process. I think most teachers do curriculum design with, okay, what do they need to learn? But at Quest, it's what do they need to learn? How are we going to engage them? And what role are the kids going to be stepping into? And what story are the kids going to be stepping into? So it's all a part of creating this narrative.
Hence HTTP.
That's the exact thing you put in front of the website.
Can I see?
Yeah, this is.
Are you sure that's what you see?
Yeah, HTTP. That's 10 sides.
Really weird. I totally thought your specimen number was going to be a plant cell. Wow.
That is ODO. This is ODO.
The light switch is red. DE. That second letter is an E.
What? E?
Greetings, TW students. I'm Dr. Smalls. I work for Shrinkley Labs. I am honored to say you are invited to compete in the 2013 Shrinkley Labs Cell City Design Competition.
The need to know is created by this cast of characters. There's a teeny little doctor named Dr. Smalls, and he has shrunken himself and put himself inside of the body of one of his patients because he was trying to find out what this mystery disease was. And in shrinking himself, he lost all of his medical vocabulary, and he sends my students a communique. So the need to know is help get me out of this body I'm trapped and help cure my patient. So it's actually completely ridiculous. And the kids know it's a game. But it's so fun for them to become a part of this narrative that they do get right in. And they do get involved and start figuring out the clues of, well, where is Dr. Smalls now? Well, we know he's in this hollow space, and they start learning about the body from basically these clues of his location in the body. So they know that it's all made up and they know it's all just play, but it's fun for them. It's much more fun than just, PowerPoint after PowerPoint, and now we're going to learn about the respiratory system, boys and girls.
I think we play games at Quest to Learn because it helps us incorporate learning into having fun.
You could learn from a game and be like, oh, that was so fun. And then read a book and be like, oh, that was fun.
It leads some kids to get sidetracked. Well, this isn't real, or what? I don't care about Dr. Smalls, but for 99% of the kids, it's like they're totally in.
Couple last words. There's been a lot of interest in the school from around the world. A lot of people asking, will you open schools in our place? And the answer is probably not. We don't even like to think about the school as being a kind of model that you can export. What we do like to think about it as is a space of possibility that exists within a really tough public school district in the U.S. That can act as an inspiration for other people wanting to do similar things about what is possible and what can actually be done. And we hope to use it as a kind of research and design space so that we can build sets of tools, sets of trainings, sets of resources that can be exported. Either by people who want to do something that looks similar to this in their own location, or simply by a teacher, for instance, that wants to be a little bit more savvy about using games in their classroom. So we've just started to release those resources. They're all on the website. You can check them out. And we hope to do a lot more of that in the future. So thank you. Thanks for listening.